Begin. Begin? Yes? I forgot to turn on the light, so everything's really dark. Yes, this is what everything looks like when I don't have it backlit correctly. Okay, so tonight we're continuing where we left off on Spine. Actually, let me say first off, so on the upload of the other night, like it's not that I'm trying to hide our mistakes, but I'm not allowed to talk about hardware specifically by vendor. So if I know it's not up on YouTube to see, but basically we had to call it on Spine. I think we had 6 wipes, one of them was logged. That's the best I could do for you, but regarding my hardware, I can't say by vendor what I have, but basically I have a processor that has hyperthreading, but I disable it because even though hyperthreading is supported right now in WoW, it's still better to turn it off. Also, I run an SLI setup / Crossfire because I'm not being brand loyal or anything with my graphics cards, and those also have a lot of hiccups with WoW. So if you are building a rig, I would not recommend getting 2 cards. I would just get 1 super card. And I also have an SSD, which is really nice for load times, basically. So that's all I'm going to say about my hardware. I can't get into the specifics. Also, the stream with my Shadow, like Blitz basically, because I've talked really fast, that Shadow stream got cut off like at the end, and the things that were missed were kind of really important, like multi-dotting, I don't know, just like little Shadow nuances. So if this goes fast tonight at the end of the stream, I'm gonna like flip on my Shadow spec, hit up some dummies, and show you like, well, show you how I do multi-dots and how I think multi-dotting should be done. So that's what I'm looking to do in tonight. For those of you who were watching it live and saw the wipes, you know, connection stability is really important, but some things that I looked at personally, I wasn't doing my max throughput. Like I looked at my theoretical possible max throughput, and I tried to estimate what it would be if you take out like some of that throughput from doing DPS, because sometimes I do DPS, like my smite rotation, and then I also looked at how many globals I was spending on dispels, and how many like dead seconds I was wasting, you know, waiting to dispel, because I don't cast heals in between my dispels, and I still wasn't maxing out my throughput. For the one attempt that was logged, I had to just do my best to look at the video to figure out the other attempts, and it's just hard to eyeball that, but I did have the logs of the first attempt we did where we were 2 healing it, and my max throughput, I mean, it could have been just a little bit better. Not much better. Like, you know, I don't think that's why we wiped, but I could have done a bit better. And I looked at my mana spent, and I think if we were going to try to 2 heal it again, I need to reforge a lot more to Spirit. So. And it looks like our... Okay, it looks like we're not starting right away, which is good, because that means I can talk about Shadow really fast before this gets going. Let me turn on my light though. Incoming camera work screwing up because of the aperture soaking up too much light. Okay. So let's flip on our Shadow spec here, and I'll try to cover, I think, what got cut off in mid-sentence, like on my past stream where I was talking about Shadowpriesting. Now, I know that Shadowpriest stream went really fast. Like, I had a lot of information to cover because that's like the one and only raid that I'll ever get to raid is Shadow, so I just kind of like blitzed through it, top speed. Maybe in the future, what I might do is I'm kind of doing a little, well, I don't know if I'm doing this permanently, but I did do an open raid with a group that was doing Firelands. So I don't know if I'll be able to do Shadow DPS on like a heroic Dragon Soul run, but what I can do is do it on like a heroic Firelands run, which is what I was doing last night. Although I was doing it as Discipline, I think I might be able to get in a shadow. Okay, throughout my stream on Shadow I talked about my 3 trinkets. Like basically I have my will, which is always like the best trinket no matter what circumstance, but my secondary trinkets are an interesting choice because I don't have the Cunning of the Cruel, nor do I have any other heroic versions of any good trinkets. So I have like a 384 version of the Ragnaros trinket, not even the heavy duty like heroic mode one. And I have Bottled Wishes, which puts me up to a new haste plateau, which increases my Devouring Plague damage, and it's an on-use cooldown that lines up perfectly with like my Archangel and basically my 4-piece set bonus burst rotation. So that's where that proc gains a lot of value. If it's like if the duration of the fight is like right in here is where my proc's going to be on cooldown. If I'm going to squeeze in one more cooldown before the end of the fight, then Bottled Wishes gains a lot of value compared to my other trinket like this, which is a static flat increase on a patchwork style fight. And then I also have a trinket, Necromantic Focus, which, I mean, technically if it was just a patchwork fight, the variable pulse would win out, but this trinket gains a lot, I mean like a severe advantage on any fight with multi-dotting. And there are some tricky situations where this trinket gains a little bit of an advantage, like yeah, so I mean it's hard to like sort of illustrate all of them, but this trinket situationally can do some pretty hefty damage boosts given the fight circumstances. So that's like my trinket situation. What I did cover in that, but I'll just review it, is Mindflay clipping, which is like your primary nuke. Get a cast bar that can show the adjustment of the ticks in Mindflay, and Quartz only registers 3 ticks, like 1, 2, 3 every time. You want to get a cast bar add-on that can adjust dynamically. If you interrupt your cast for another Mindflay, it'll show where the new ticks are. So I use Gnosis. I'm not saying it's like the best add-on, but that's what I use. I also kind of talked about like you want to get Mind Blast as close to on cooldown as possible, but sometimes it's okay to delay it by just like half a second. And what I meant by that is, like, see how I'm casting Mindflay here? If you were to cast Mind Blast like right after this blue portion here, that's totally fair game. You just did a tick of damage, and a Mind Blast right after that would be fine. If you did a Mind Blast here where my mouse pointer is, that's not so fine. You should have waited just that little extra half a second more to get, well, not even half a second, like 0.2 seconds more, just to get that little extra tick off for Mindflay before casting Mind Blast. Or that's not just casting Mind Blast, casting any spell and interrupting your Mindflay. That's what it means to Mindflay clip. So yeah, you want to be a judgment, like basically your bare bones judgment call is like, I look at it halfway in between the 2 ticks. If it's like closer, if it's closer to this side where my mouse is, then that's when I just cast off cooldown. If it's closer to where this side is, then I wait for it to go one more little tick of Mindflay and then cast whatever it is I'm trying to refresh. Sometimes that changes, like if your Empowered Shadow buffs is about to fall off or something and you're refreshing, you want to, like, of course, refresh your dot before the Empowered Shadows falls off. Like, I mean, it gets really situational, basically. You need to make a judgment call, and that's, like, one of the things that will separate you as a good Shadow Priest from, like, an average Shadow Priest. And then kind of what I did with my multi-dotting rotation is, if there's 2 targets, you want to keep your dots up on them full time. You don't want to, like, manually refresh your Shadow Word Pain. You want to use Mindflay to refresh it. And then whichever target needs to have that extra burst is the one that should have Devouring Plague. So yeah, you want to watch those 2. And then my other tip was, like, you know, say if you're dotting up your targets or whatever, Vampiric Touch in this point in the game does the most damage. So you want to actually cast that before Shadow Word Pain. And the order that you want to cast it is Touch, 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 Pain, Pain, Pain. That's going to max you the biggest amount of damage, and like, well, I mean, it's a theoretical loss of damage, but not by much. And then when it comes to refreshing, if you refresh by a second late on any one of the 3 targets, it will put you so far behind in DPS comparatively than if you wouldn't have refreshed on time, that in my mind it's better to take the like 0.3% loss in DPS and just start your rotation with like your touch, touch, and touch. And you'll see why that's like really nice, is because when you are doing your rotation, like on multi-mobs or whatever, you're refreshing them with Mindflay, it's really easy to refresh all of your dots because you did them in a particular order, and you can always just guarantee that they'll line up again at that same in the same order that you cast them in the first place. So refreshing them is as simple as just going 1, 2, 3. So yeah, that's my like thoughts and feelings on multi-dotting. It's something that kind of takes a little bit of practice, and it really is like the more difficult, I guess, rotation if you're playing Shadow. Like that's your hard thing to do, and it's also kind of your calling, because it's like way better as a ranged cleave to do dot cleaving than it is for any other like melee class to do cleaving damage. So that's like something you do want to be good at, and you do want to work on. And then the other thing I want to talk about is if there's more than 3 targets, that's 4, you need a Mind Seer, and Mind Seer needs to hit all 4 targets. It used to be, like, Mind Seer's a weird spell. Over the years it's kind of changed. You can now cast it on the primary target, and it actually does damage to the primary target now. So if you're returning Shadowpriest and you didn't get that memo, you can cast it on that target instead of trying to find a friendly target who's nearby it. You'll see in fights like it's mandatory to know that kind of information on, say, like Ragnaros Heroic. If you do the stack them up and move sideways method on phase 2, there's not going to be a friendly target over there to target to send your Mind Seer on, so you have to target the enemy. So yeah, that's something you need to watch out for. Another thing about Mind Seer is it's affected by Evangelism, or Dark Evangelism, and it's also affected by Empowered Shadows. So these are two buffs. I don't really know off the top of my head what the exact timings is on it. I think if it's something that's going to die in about less than 10 seconds, don't worry about either of these 2 buffs. But if it's something that's going to go over 10 seconds, you're going to be Mind Searing, you kind of want to watch those 2 buffs. So the more you know there. And I think my video didn't cut off like when to refresh dots. Like I think I managed to get that out, but just in case I didn't. Okay, so like if you get int procs and you're a very lowly geared Shadow Priest, those are going to have a much bigger value than they would if you're a high geared Shadow Priest, because the relative value of int is going to be like a gain from a temporary int buff is going to be like a smaller percentage increase than it would be if you had a lower spell power. So basically, like, if none of that makes sense, if you have crap gear and you get int procs, like say from your engineering or your tailoring professions, or power and torrent, or Dark Moon card Volcano, or the Valiona Thuralian trinket, which is mastery, not spell power, but same thing applies. You wanna refresh your dots during those temporary procs if like you're roughly under 372 eye level gear, like is kind of like the estimate. So if like you're a fresh Shadow Priest, then yes, you want to refresh your dots with those spell power gains. It's going to be a DPS bonus, and then you don't want to like clip it too early. You want to keep it at that spell power gain as long as possible. The other thing you want to do, and this is only if you're low geared. If you're a high geared person, which really isn't that high, but just like medium at this content and higher, pretty much like don't refresh the dots, just do your rotation like normal, and if those int procs happen, like they'll gain your DPS a little bit when they happen. You don't need to worry about refreshing dots. Especially if you have the 4-piece set bonus, you don't want to waste a whole lot of time filling up your rotation in between this burst cooldown with dot refreshes, because you need to be getting as many like Mind Flays out as you can, because you need to try to get that Shadow Fiend refreshed, and it only refreshes if you get enough crits on Mind Flay. So the more globals you're wasting on, like not wasting, but the more globals you spend on dot refreshes, the less of a chance that Shadow Fiend will come off cooldown when your Archangel comes off cooldown. So I think I covered just by theory crafting like the rough crit percentage of what you want to have like in your spell crit to make sure Shadow Fiend kind of comes off cooldown, but that's not like a guarantee. Just always remember that there are other crit modifiers, like, you know, Ret Paladins or all those classes that have the 3% crit debuff. They put that on the boss target, so it's not going to show up in your character pane. And also remember that there are a lot of targets, or there are a lot of classes that have that 5% spell crit bonus that also will show up in your character pane. And it's not, if you're like doing your reforges, just like keep in mind that that's gonna show up after the fact. Like it's gonna show up like when you're in a raid and not when you're by yourself. So that's something to think about. But yeah, make sure. I don't remember the exact number. Maybe I have it on my notebook here, because I did write it down when I was doing my Shadowpriest streaming. Okay, yeah. At my it's gonna change by haste, like this magical crit number. But at my haste level, which is basically like in between the improved devouring portion 3202 haste plateau, and then right beneath that where the extended Devouring Plague full duration gets an extra tick. Like that's kind of where my haste falls, and at my gear level I need 21.67% intellect, or not intellect, crit. I need I need about 21.67 crit to sort of guarantee that my Mind Flays will get my Shadow Fiend off cooldown. It's kind of hard to see, like by looking at it, like his like, you know, his crit chance is only like 16%, but keep in mind that I don't have any stacks of my trinket up, and once I get that trinket stacked all the way up, let's see here, gotta get my 10 stacks. I'm gonna take off my other int procs. I'm sitting at 18% when I have my 10 stacks of my int trinket, and then I also have like other buffs like that I don't have right now. Like I don't have my food buff, I don't have my gift, or I don't have Mark of the Wild, and I don't have the just like 5% crit buff. So I'm a little underbuffed, and I'm actually over the magical crit number, but you know, sometimes I get unlucky and my Mind Flays don't refresh my Shadow Fiend in time, so that's something to look out for. Okay, so that's I think everything that got deleted on my shadow post, and I'm really working hard to try to figure out an alternative method to make sure that this content doesn't get deleted like that. So yeah, stay tuned. I kind of wanted to try something new tonight to see if I could record this in the method that I want to record it in for this, but you know, for now I'm still running on the same programs I ran last time. But what it'll mean if I get this problem I've been working on ironed out, like I only have a certain amount of time to work on my live streams, so I didn't get it worked out between Tuesday and now. But if I do fix it, what it'll mean is if you watch the live stream while I'm playing, like right now, you'll hear the music in the background. That's okay. If you try to catch up with this live stream at a later date on YouTube or whatever, it's not going to have the music in the background, but if I record it myself, it's going to be in a higher definition than it will be when it's on Twitch being live streamed as it's streamed, because I'll have a higher frames per second, and I won't be restricted by the pixels per inch that I have to bottleneck it down to stream it, because yeah, I am like sort of like severing that quality of the picture just slightly because I'm limited by my bandwidth, my upload speed. So yeah, if you catch it at a later date, you know, you won't get the music, but you will get the quality. But I have to figure that out first. It's like kind of a work in progress. So that's what we're looking at technically. Okay. We're waiting around to finish up Spine. If it doesn't happen, what I might do is hop on a different tune, because I kind of want to show, how to tank. So what I might do is if this guy ever doesn't come back online, we're gonna I think we're gonna get on my tank tune, which is a Death Knight. Well, I have like 4 tank tunes, but I'm going to get on the tank that's a Death Knight specifically, and I'm going to kind of like demonstrate. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do that now. Yeah, because I have a flask I don't want to waste that's up from the other night, and then we're not doing anything else, like, and I don't have anything better to show. So I'll just like start with showing my UI. That's what I'll do. I'll show my UI for my Death Knight. Don't want everyone to see my full list of characters though, so I'll turn on my picture as soon as he's logged in. Okay, so here's some differences about my Death Knight. First off, you'll notice I actually show my buttons on my Death Knight. I do this actually with all my tunes, but I want to specifically make the point of saying that with my Death Knight or all my tank tunes, it's important to see my buttons, or at least something that displays all of my cooldowns at a glance. So it's like when I look at this bar here, I can see everything that's on cooldown. The one bar interface for my healer is okay because I'm not so reliant on my cooldowns, but like, I mean, if you're a tank, like, cooldowns are the most like important thing that you need to see. Like, even more than threat now. Like, it used to be that threat was important, but now it's like you don't even have to worry about threat. This is the most important thing that you need to be seeing. So yeah, I have all my cooldowns visible front and center here. I also have a heads-up display, which is a little bit different than my priest, and that's because, like, my priest, my mouse pointer is kind of like where my eyes kind of tend to drift towards because I need to keep an eye on the healer frames, and I kind of like can see with my peripheral vision what my toon is doing. If you're a tank, you know, picking up stray ads, like pretend all these training dummies are stray ads, they're not down here like where my mouse pointer are, they're up front and center, like where my toon is, and I need to be able to like quickly grab whatever ads may like not have aggro, and I need to just like be able to see them where my toon is. So I also don't want to like because I need to do this, my resources are sort of circled around my toon. This is a configuration that I did with Ice HUD and Bartender. So these two things on either side, like the blood tap, shit, what's this called? Rune tap, blood tap. I don't even know what my abilities are called in this tune. I just know what they do. Blood tap. Okay. Yeah, my blood tap and outbreak buttons are Bartender. So in case you're wondering, like, can I get Ice HUD display to do this? But so that's Bartender. Everything else in this little circle is Ice HUD. This is my health. This is my runic power. These are my runes. So here's what it looks like in action. I go to start, you know, attacking something. I'm trying to, like, I guess, like, get my runes off, like, you know, in a normal rotation, or what I consider normal. So yeah, they turn to death runes. Ice HUD already does this by default, and then you'll see that there's this other little bar right here. Also, well, but yeah, I'll get to that in a second. But this little bar, it's called Death Shield Tracker, I think. I don't even know what this add-on's called. I better make sure of that before I go any further. Is it Blood Shield Stacker? Blood Shield Tracker. Okay. Blood Shield Tracker, which it comes with two components. The first one shows you that it shows you like the number. It'll show you like how big your shield is and what % is remaining, and like how much is remaining. Like I have it configured, and it has a little countdown timer to show you like when to refresh it. There is another component to it that I have turned off, and I'm trying to remember what it does. I think it's like an estimate to count back exactly 5 seconds to show you how much damage you took, but that has so many variables that change on it. Like it screws up with latency, it screws up with combat log strangeness, because like blood shields measured pretty weirdly in the combat log. So some people swear by it. I would just say turn it off. Like there's no reason to have it on, in my opinion. But the portion of this that is important is just being able to see that yes, I have a blood shield up and it's stacking, or you know, how much can I absorb, so that kind of thing. Now the most complicated thing about being a Death Knight is like managing this blood shield. So there's kind of a couple schools of thought, and this also affects your reforges and the way you talent your stuff. Okay, I'm getting the message to switch back to my priest, but basically with this blood shield, one camp is like, you know, you get hard and then you heal hard. So if you're doing that, you want a lot of mastery, and you kind of want to stack a little bit, like you just want to make sure you have enough health to like take those big hits, because you're playing a little bit more dangerously. So that's one thing you need to watch for. The other thing you need to watch for, I guess, like, is if damage is coming like short, a little fast and consistent at you, then you want to be like making sure you're not like letting that stack over like the 5 seconds, hitting a shield, and then like waiting for that little shield to stack down and then like hitting it in a delay again, because your blood shield, like I'm trying to do this visually so I can explain it better. If you have a blood shield that you waited like 5 seconds or some really long time to put up, then you took all of this damage during that time. You have like X amount of shield. Well, if it's short and little fast bursts, they're not going to cleave through the whole shield right away. It's going to take like another 5 seconds or so. I don't even know if this is visible. Is this even visible? Nope, it's not even visible on my stream. Basically, like, you know, you have like a full little, you have your whole death shield sitting in front of you, and these little short bursts are never fully depleting it. Well, when you go to refresh that big death shield again, or that, when you go to refresh it with the death strike again, it's not gonna, you're not gonna have any damage taken in that previous 5 seconds, because the whole time you were taking damage, it was just being absorbed into your previous blood shield that you had a big hit on. So you kind of want to, instead of like waiting, you want to like attack before your old blood shield comes up, and you just want to like spam death strikes as fast as humanly possible, because you're taking short little bits of damage. If you're taking big chunks of damage, that's when you want to slow down your death striking. So that's like what gets the most Deathknights new players bad. Like that's what gives them a bad rap, is because they don't know the difference between waiting on your death strikes and like doing it at off cooldown basically with your runes. The other thing I want to say, if you're just starting out, don't get in the habit of always double tapping your death strikes. Like your blood runes have 2 globals, and then they have to wait like 10 seconds to come off cooldown again, or 5 seconds, 6 seconds, I don't remember. But if you spam death strike back to back, they're going to come off cooldown at the same time. Like, you know, space those out if you want to make it like easier on your healers, and if you want to kind of be more survivable and read the situations better. Don't just like double death strike all the time. Death strike, maybe do something else with a global, and then come back and do another death strike. So yeah, okay, now if you weren't confused by that death strike explanation, here's the trick. They have, like Deathknights have this pretty cool mechanic, well I think it's pretty cool, that makes your rune strike ability, that's your runic power dump, refresh a rune. You can game those runes. So here's kind of like how you game a rune. If you have like all of your death runes on cooldown, you want to do 1 heart strike, so you have 1 blood rune up, like off cooldown, and then you don't want to use that last blood rune. So in your like 6 runes that you have, all 4 death ones want to be down, and 1 blood needs to be down. That way, you click your runic button, like you click your runic power button dump, and it will force, since there's 1 blood rune remaining, this blood rune that is on cooldown won't get procced with that runic empowerment. It will force one of the death runes to come off cooldown. So if you get lucky, there's like a 45% chance when you do a rune dump, you know, everything's on cooldown, you'll game it, you'll hit it, and one of your runes will come off cooldown instantly. That's when you press rune tap, which is why I have it on the other side of my bar, like next to like it has outbreak on one side and the rune tap on the other. Hit rune tap, and then that rune that is on cooldown, the one, it's the one that's going to come off cooldown and turn into a death rune. And then you have that 1 extra death strike, boom, and then you can hit another runic power and hopefully get another 2 like runes off cooldown. So that's, I mean, it's kind of complicated to explain, but if you're doing it and you're pressing those, like, if you're making use of those gamed procs, then you're gonna get those runes off cooldown, and you're gonna get like maybe 1 or 2 extra death strikes per minute. So, and those death strikes add up fast too. Okay, something that I didn't do as well last week is my throughput was kind of bad, so that's what I'm working on this week. Well, on the 1 attempt that I looked at, my throughput was pretty bad. And it wasn't like horrible, it just wasn't as good as it could have been. So yeah, that's what I'm working on now. I think it was Radial, someone I've talked to on the forums actually before, on like a late night forum discussion, asked me like why I was showing the 5% reduced health buff that comes up all the time. It's not that I'm showing it intentionally, it's like a complete accident. The reason it's showing is because Voodoo is screwing up. So what I did is I looked at my add-on like in between last week and now, or last Tuesday and now, to see if I could fix it. And I think I might have fixed it. We'll find out here in a second. Okay, let's see. I don't remember if degradation is that thing that, like, I don't remember exactly when it falls on and off. Like, it says that it's on my character now, but does it usually show up, like, on my UI this go round or like the next go round? Because I feel like I don't have this degradation buff showing on the later couple of go rounds, but maybe I'm wrong there. The explanation for why I just like let that buff just go to this DPS instead of like a healer is because we had a couple of those searing plasmas out, and I didn't want to fall behind. Crap! I just let Grace fall off. One of the reasons that I'm having so much trouble like keeping up throughput-wise compared to my other healer is Grace keeps falling off, and then the other problem I'm having is I can't get Rapture to proc. So I'm like starved for mana, and he is not. If you watch the stream later, you'll see why I did that. Fellas, time to roll. This is going much more smoothly tonight, and I'm going to attribute it to working aggros. I just messed up there. I got gripped and I wasn't paying attention to my Rapture cooldown when I came out of the grip, so I just went a couple seconds there without doing my Rapture correctly. I also just had to interrupt a cast there because I'm gonna barrier these. We're ahead on the debuff right now, kind of, so that's why I'm helping with this tendon. I kind of waited just a little bit to wait because I'm still glyphed for the, what's it called? I'm still glyphed for, like, my Holy Fire debuff, I mean, gives me, like, a little bit of extra bonus to my smite, so that's why I waited there for just a second. That is some bull shit. I totally life gripped that guy. I don't know what happened there. Like, you saw that, right? I life gripped him out of the explosion, and he had a bubble on him, like he had weakened soul. I don't understand. Whatever. Oh shoot, why am I pressing heal? Whew. That was a very, very close micromanagement there. What I just did is I saw that Weakened Soul was not quite about to expire on my mage that just got gripped, and he didn't have, like, he wasn't going to ice block it, or he would have done it already. So what I did is I flashed healed him to just get that little bit of countdown off with Train of Thought, and then helped him out. Same with this guy. He's gotten gripped. I'm just trying to get some debuffs, or I'm trying to get some bubbles out on the people who don't have that debuff yet. God. Oh shoot, we might wipe here. That was really close. I didn't see the buff had gone off, and I pressed that. It's just a really bad time, basically. Also, my druid's out of mana, which is why I'm divine hymning here. I'm just trying to get us some extra throughput gains. I'm pain supping myself, but I'm probably gonna die. Paladin just saved my nuts again. I don't have barrier up for this, so I might die again. Well, it didn't feel like... I'm gonna ask my group once we wait. Let me see if I'm... not even in vent. We didn't just kill Bloods while that Nova was exploding, were we? It felt like there was a lot of damage going out besides just the normal Nova explosion there. I wasn't in vent, so like I don't know if we were calling out when we should DPS the Bloods, but is someone calling out like when to do DPS on them and when to stop? Okay. Big awkward silence. What we're talking about now is healer mana. For whatever reason tonight, and last Tuesday, we're having a lot of mana problems in this fight that we normally don't have. So I think that's partially because the third healer is usually a shaman, and tonight we have a priest instead. So okay, I'm having like a lot of mana problems, so something I'm doing differently this time is I'm not going to, or I'm going to try to avoid having the debuff go on Retrified so I can guarantee easier Rapture procs. This is really tense and dicey though, because that means later in the fight it's more prone that I won't be able to get it back on him, you know, and we won't, like I won't be able to guarantee that the good buff goes out to him in 2 stacks, which means I'll have to baby him for the last phase when mana is already looking pretty tight. Come on, Rhett, get Rapture to proc while my int procs are up. Jeez. See me trying to time that, it's just absurd. I can't get Rapture to proc on my tanks anymore. Their avoidance is just too high. Alright, if another searing plasma goes out, yep. Basically what I was looking at there was I was seeing kind of like... I was gonna see like how many searing plasmas were out relative to like how many of us were DPSing. I was gonna see as how much like DPS I could squeak out while avoiding those heals and shit. I don't know what the deal is with Windows Update, but is anyone else getting the Windows Update just like spam these days? I think that just happened to me again. I think it's happening a lot more frequently, I've noticed. It's like Windows Update just seems to always be tanking my machine. Like I don't know what it is, but like recently I feel like I've gotten a lot of security updates, so anyone else who's running Windows 7 has noticed that. I'm also trying to make as much out of my borrowed time procs as possible tonight, because that's something I looked at last over the logs. Like, we only logged one attempt, but it was pretty revealing to me. One of the things that I did a lot better when we were learning Spine versus now is I kind of took care of my like borrowed time procs. Like, I just played my Disc Priest better on earlier attempts of Spine versus now. Let's see, she already has one. This guy does not. I do not like being grabbed. Alright, we're using Hymn of Hope early here, so that's what I'm doing. Procking all my int procs to try to make my mana pool bigger so I can soak up all of the ticks of Hymn of Hope for myself. But I'm also, I looked at my other three healers, Atrial, Arazian, and me are the ones healing. I can see their mana pools in my voodoo frames, and because they were all kind of like sitting lower than all of our other DPS, I could ensure that they were going to get the most out of those ticks. I haven't used Shadow Fiend yet, because I forgot to do it on the first plate lift, or the second first plate lift, if that makes sense. It looks like all three of us are managing our mana better though. It's good to see. Keep getting my okay, this is gonna be a terrible attempt for me in terms of like actions per minute, because I was trying to get the target once again, but I did it off a ranged DPS, and when I did my slashed assist macro on them, they were targeting a corruption instead of the tendon, because they had to break their grip, and I just sat there for like probably 2 or 3 whole seconds, like trying to cast smite on it, and it was like, you need to be facing the target, you need to be facing the target.
4.
Goodbye, mana. I think that's going to be a problem. I used my barrier a little bit late there, like right before that Nova was going out, because I wanted to make sure that that Grace was stacked up on the target that had the debuff. But I'm thinking now that that was a problem. Shoot. Every time they call for a cleave on the Bloods, it's the same people that are always just taking aggro and not pointing the right direction. That was risky. I didn't even look to see where the grip timer was there. I just assumed I'd probably be about safe-ish, and just started divine hymning. I'm like really full on mana, so I'm just bombing flash heals because I kind of just figured. Some Guardian Spirit up on this. Huh. I'm getting a phone call. Okay, a lot of stuff was happening there at the end. Looked at healer mana. We were all sitting really good, so me and one of the other healers just started dumping it. What's up, dude? What's up? Hey! Thanks, man. Yep. I know exactly what I did. Alright. Yep. Yep. Alright, see ya. Bye. I'm really glad that that was my friend, real life friend, that called. He said he tuned into my stream and couldn't see the picture. Because when I logged out to switch tunes, I turned off my screen capture. Oh, that just makes me feel so stupid. I turned off my screen capture when I went to the character select screen, and then I never turned it back on again. So you guys have no idea what I was thinking on that last spine fight. I'll just say this. It felt a lot harder this week than it normally does, and I think it's because we're used to just having that mana tide totem in the raid. Like, we have a lot more mana to just throw around, because I felt like I was doing a lot of really risky things with Rapture. Like, I would put it up like 3 seconds on Retrified once he had his first buff of the earth on him. I'd put it up like way in advance because I knew that it takes forever for it to pop on him. And there were 2 times, or maybe 3 times actually, on that last encounter where I lined that up and it didn't pop when it was supposed to, like it popped too early. There was also a couple times where it popped just a little bit too late. It's done. Okay. I think what we're gonna, like, I think since I really screwed that up and didn't have my screen capture turned on, I think I'm gonna cut out that segment of spine. Well, no, because then it'll look like I cut it out because we weren't able to do it or something stupid. Yeah, alright, I'll leave that segment in, and it'll just be dark, and I'll put a disclaimer over it or something. I think YouTube can put the little, like, the little notifications or something on top of it. I'll just do that. Grab a health stone. Okay, so this will be interesting. Right now what we're going to do is I'm going to try to 2-heal this. We've never done this before on heroic mode. It's me and the druid, so let's see how this works out. It's basically just how well our other DPS players position themselves or like blow up stuff, because the faster they can get stuff down, the easier this 2-healing will be. Trell and Regalos are out of it. I'm doing things differently this week, and so that if you can see, I'm like prayer healing a little bit early. I'm just like putting out a lot more bubbles than I usually do, so I'm kind of burning through mana a bit faster than normal. Okay, I'm sitting pretty good on mana. I think it'll be fine. Yeah, I think I'll be fine for the rest of the fight. Just keep prayer mending bouncing. If you're new and have never seen me do madness before, this is a perfect fight for prayer mending. I'm also just trying to keep my trinket stacks refreshed with little instants like renew. And I'm also, now that I'm engineer, it's just silly how much I can line up my intellect procs together to get like a really super big rapture or a really big mana return on Archangel. So that's something I'm doing differently, because I've never done this fight as an engineer before. This is like all brand new for me. I'm also paying attention. I'm kind of like doing a little bit of prayer healing preemptively because I want to make sure that like the Divine Aegis for sure is going to be consumed no matter what, so it is effective healing. Crap, I'm in line with my Shadowpriest when I turned. I'm so close to these guys right now that Penance turned my camera to the point where I could actually see, or to where I was like actually facing the guy I'm not supposed to be hitting. Like, just to give you an idea of how tight it is positioning wise. Doing a lot of whip and twisting here during that one part, like during that first part when we were all spread out. I had my vagaries up. I just now threw on my other weapon, the Maw, to try to get more healing out. The internal cooldown on it is pretty much like as soon as you equip it in terms of that proc, so you just want to equip it like as soon as possible. I just did something silly where I actually just goofed up my mana usage. I just goofed up and like used a bubble unnecessarily. It's okay though. I also just used my Shadow Fiend with my NG trinket. I'm not used to like how much mana I can actually use while using that, because I like definitely just use that kind of like in a weird spot. Okay, I used it when I saw another int proc go up. I'm like, okay, there's an int proc up, and I'm kind of sitting at like a little bit under a fourth of my mana, so I'm going to use Shadow Fiend now. But I could have like delayed it a little bit. I could have waited. But you know, we are killing this stuff like really fast. What I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to control it so that my smites are probably going to reach a melee. Shoot. My mage, though, is really good about standing way off to the side. I can't reach him. I kind of don't use my power infusion at this time usually when we're doing this, but the reason I'm using it at this time this week is because I know that we're about to get a tranquility from my druid, so that's why the weird timing, in case you're wondering. I just delayed Rapture by about 2 seconds there because I saw that my end procs were off cooldown, so I was trying to proc one of them before I did Rapture. Judgment Call there. Okay, this is where my druid's supposed to be using Tranquility. Drink 2. Well, I guess we didn't need it. Whew, can't believe that he stayed alive during that. Betrayal's got it. I'm using Divine Hymn kind of a little bit early, but I wanted to use it like right at the end of my power infusion so I could gain that extra 2 ticks from it. That's how much power infusion gives me. Shrapnel. Mid ret me.
3, 2, 1.
Seth.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
They're spawning the demon. Darlow mid, Sish. Brazian Demon, Atrella. Yep, right. Woo! This is gonna be tight, mana-wise. Come on, Rapture, cheers, rock. Alright, that actually wasn't nearly as bad, although I got like all intense and focused. 2 healing Heroic Madness isn't so bad with all the nerfs. Oh, we only had 6. Whew. Well, you're just giving him the staff to taunt Pallies. No. Well, I know that this week we had a hiccup, but you know, it was a factor that was outside of our control for selling them out. We had a stable connections tonight and one-shot both bosses we had trouble with, like, you know, last Tuesday. So you know, consider this like another advert, I guess, that, you know, we are selling the mount. We're basically giving all of the loot to you, with the exception of some rings and maybe like one of the trinkets. But basically, if you're coming in here with us, you're going to get all the loot, you're going to get the mount, and you're going to get to see the heroic content, and you're going to be live streamed with your permission, and then you'll be able to go back and see yourself later and later and later. So yeah, next week it's going to be even easier for our group to clear this. Just hit up Razien, R-A-Z-I-E-N, if you want to be a part of this. Now I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do, because I missed the whole spine fight. Well, I mean, you get to see me talking about it, and like my goofy looking face as I concentrate really hard, but I didn't record it. That's a big problem. And I've only been streaming for an hour. I have like 20 minutes. Okay, so what I was saying kind of before the raid is how much, like how you should do your death strikeage. Okay, if damage is quick and in small bursts, you want to kind of do as many death strikes as you can. One of the tricks you can do is called runic power gaming. Runic power gaming is where, you know, you have 6 total runes. These are death runes, these are blood runes. You want to keep these death runes on cooldown as much as possible. And these two, you want to have 1 blood rune on cooldown, but leave this one up. That's really important that you leave this one up. So, what you do is you get all this junk on cooldown, you should have a stash of runic power. Try to use that runic empowerment by dumping rune strikes to proc a death rune, which is what's going to be guaranteed to proc. Once a death rune procs, then press rune tap. When you press rune tap, it becomes a death rune. You can get an extra death strike. You can gain about 1 or 2 death strikes per minute this way. If you are looking at like kind of how much damage you're absorbing, how steady your health pool is, one of the tools is look at World of Logs or any sort of like combat log parse measure and see how many death strikes per minute you're getting. If you're doing this runic empowerment gaming, you can squeeze out about 2 more. You are probably going to be absorbing more damage than you take, which means it's going to be based off of a percentage of how big your health is. So the 2 things that you like, this is like why I prefer to stack mastery and health instead of like avoidance stats. Basically, you want to try to get as much, like avoidance stats are good and all, but in my mind, you really want to get like 2 stamina trinkets if you can help it, but right now what I'm running is like 1 stamina trinket and 1 mastery trinket, so you want to get like a big chunk of those 2, and then you want to like gem and enchant everything mastery that you can possibly put in. The exception be on green gems, put mastery and stamina, where green gems are applicable for blue slots. But basically, like, that's how you stack stats, and then you kind of want to keep dodge and parry even in terms of reforging for this playstyle. So that's if damage is like really fast and bursty. Little fast bursty damage like that happens with like adds, like this happens in 5-mans. This kind of technique that I'm explaining, that's what I would use in like 5-man dungeons, because there's little things pegging on you and they're not going to fully deplete your shield. Now, if things are hitting you for like big, slow, colossal hits, that's when you want to slow down your Death Strike usage, probably to like once every 3 to 5 seconds. And yes, you do want to delay it that big, because your Death Strike is calculated based on how much damage you took in the previous like 5 seconds. So you want to make sure that you don't like overstack a shield and take no damage in the previous 5 seconds, because then your Death Strike isn't going to be a big shield. When you put up a big shield, okay, sweet. I think we're gonna blitz. We're gonna blitz BOT, and I think I'm just gonna keep streaming it, because this is probably gonna be a standalone stream. I'm not gonna edit it and put it with the previous stream, so that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to see if we have like a raid lock for. We're basically trying to do Sinestra, but I don't think any of us have a raid lock for Cho'Gall or Sinestra. Shit. Yeah, we're probably gonna have to do a fresh clear, but that's okay. We'll just blitz normal mode and get to see that. Anyway, so yeah, you want to delay your Death Strikes if it's like big, slow, huge chunks of damage, especially if it's things like spell casts. Like an example of this would be slow down your Death Strikes. Facing a dragon is a really good test as a Death Knight to see how you're measuring up. The first thing you want to do against a dragon, of course, is point the tail and head away from the group, but then you want to use your anti-magic shell on the dragon breath as soon as you can, so you can get that cooldown going, and then you can have it up again for the next breath as soon as possible. So one of the breaths, totally negligible, like you're not going to take any damage of it. The second one, it's not a bad idea to kind of like pool all your runes, wait for them to all be off cooldown, about a couple seconds before the breath, like I'd say maybe 8 seconds before the breath, maybe 9. Just start spamming your Death Strikes, because you haven't been taking any damage recently, so you're gonna have all of that. Try to make sure that it's on that rotation where you have your Bone Shield up, so make sure Bone Shield's kind of on, because that'll help. And then spam all your Death Strikes. You should have a pretty good shield. When she starts burning through you with her breath, like, well, his breath if it's a he dragon, and it'll probably like burn through the shield. If it's like a 3-second cast, the first second will burn through the shield. Second tick on that second breath will probably take you down a health a bit, and then that third tick will take you down to dangerously low. Death Strike after the third tick. You'll get a huge heal out of it, like much bigger than you normally would have. Juggle like Vampiric Embrace with it, and then, you know, do your runic, what's it called, blood tap? Yeah, blood tap, but it's the instant heal. Do a blood tap and then bing, you're back up at full health, and then if that happens again and you're like unprepared for it, spec Lichborn, and one of your cooldowns, just have a macro I can show you when I get back on my Death Knight sometime, is spec Lichborn and pool your runic power also with your Death Strikes when you're sitting there getting ready to attack for that breath, and then just pop Lichborn, go undead, and just start Death Striking yourself and healing yourself. That's all, okay, that's all I can like demonstrate with Death Knights right now. There's some other cool tricks you can do with them, but off the top of my head, that's everything. Do we want to clear it on normal or heroic? Okay. We're not doing BOT now, which is good because I can flip back onto my Death Knight. Okay, so something else you can do with your Death Knights, aside from the blood stacking. Always try to pool your runic power, because this runic power gaming, let's see if I can demonstrate it. I'll wait for one of these to come off cooldown. This is the one that I always leave off cooldown, right? Right now, like if I were doing this as a fresh rotation, you want to get all of those death runes like as close to cooldown basically as you can. You're intentionally, if two of these are on cooldown, you see how this one procs? Like if you have both death runes on cooldown, you can intentionally get one of them to proc with your runic empowerment, and that's what I mean by like gaming this, gaming your runic empowerment. I'm just trying to show you. Okay, so I have one blood rune up. I pressed runic empowerment. That death rune came off cooldown, so I'm pressing my rune tap or blood tap. It turns one of those blood runes into death rune, and I can get an extra death strike out of it. That's what I'm trying to explain by runic power gaming. With the Lichborn macro that I was talking about, two things about it. First, glyph for the death coil, because that extra healing applies when you're in Lichborn form. And what are your other choices? Like, I mean, some of them are compelling. Like maybe if you're having, basically here's how I look at the glyphs. Rune Strike is mandatory because of threat. Like this is the biggest threat per second glyph you can glyph as a Death Knight. Nothing else really applies. Like none of these other glyphs are really that important. The decision comes down to you have Heart Strike, Death Strike, Death and Decay, and Death Coil. I don't think Death and Decay is like this is not that big of a bonus for blood. Like your AoE is honestly more threat and more damage from Heart Strike than it is ever on Death and Decay, unless there's like 6 mobs or more or something ridiculous like that. Like there has to be a lot of mobs up, so I would never glyph Death and Decay. Maybe if you're having some threat problems on 5-mans in particular, maybe it's viable to glyph it. But even in 5-mans, I would say don't do it. So basically your decision comes down to like, okay, I have Death Coil for a 2-minute cooldown, Lichborn, you know, for the extra healing burst it does. Death Strike and Heart Strike. Well, Death Strike and Heart Strike are damage boosts. They don't really do anything else. So, something about these two, Heart Strike will do more damage if there's multiple targets you're going to cleave no matter what. Death Strike will only do more damage than this Heart Strike glyph if you have more than 30 runic power, I think is what the magic number is. I don't remember the number off the top of my head exactly, but basically if you have a certain amount of runic power, that other glyph, Death Strike, gains more value than Heart Strike on a single target. I always try to pool my runic power because I have all these sweet runic power dumps that will either give me more survivability or like proc other things, or I can use it to game extra death strikes. So I try to, like at the beginning of fights, get my runic power abilities up. Like I try to pool that a bit. So that's like my justification for why I always glyph Death Strike. Heart Strike, if you're having some DPS race related problems or there's ads that need to be cleaved, like maybe Blackhorn, that would be a good time to swap the Death Strike glyph out for Heart Strike. I always glyph Death Coil because you're a tank. The most important thing about being a tank is your survivability, and I feel that the Death Coil glyphed is just so much better with this Lichborn. Like Lichborn, if you fully pool your runic power, I mean you can do some crazy live through things you're not supposed to live through, because you can just spam Lichborn and spam Death Coils on yourself, and if it's like if you run low on runic power, you can press your 6-minute cooldown, power rune weapon, and get like a chunk of runic power back, and you can keep healing yourself, and you'll also get like a billion death strikes. Like you can literally just like survive anything if you know what you're doing with it. Here's the macro that I use with it that gives me the Lichborn. Basically, I hit it once, and once this cast Lichborn is cast, it'll skip that line forever and go to the next part. It'll always target me and cast a Death Coil at myself. If you want to get technical and add more junk to it, instead of cast target equals player, you could cast slash at, or not slash, but just slash cast at sign player death coil. Like, you could do it that way and save yourself some room, but I always make it really clear and specific with target equals player if I don't need the space. So I just have that macro bound. Show you what it looks like. Okay, so I'm kind of like full on runic power right now. Okay, I'm full on runic power. Press it once. I'm trying to find, there it is. Press it once, and then boom, I'm death coiling myself. You'll see the heals over here. These are all heals. So it's pretty crazy how many how much healing you can do. Those were like 14k heals on myself just now. It's modified by spell power bonuses. It's modified by attack power bonuses, and to some degree it's measured by your stamina in a raid, because your stamina gives you attack power as a tank. So basically, like, it's a really good thing to have no matter what. Other things you want to keep on your bars: Dark Simulacrum can sometimes help you stay alive. It depends. Like, sometimes bosses will put good Healy-ish type buffs on themselves. Dark Simulacrum is one of those abilities that was placed kind of late in the game, like came in this expansion, so it doesn't have a whole lot of bugs worked out on it. Try to use it and abuse it as much as possible. Other things you can do, for an instant nuke of heal, like I was talking about, if you're trying to survive a Dragon Breath and your other cooldowns are out, you can instantly drop a ghoul and get like a ton of health back for it. Let me show you the macro I have set up for it. Okay, this reset is by seconds. It's a timer. Sometimes it bugs out. You might have to do a slash reload UI, but it's pretty reliable for the most part. Make sure you have 40 runic power to sacrifice the demon. It is modified by increased health bonuses like Vampiric Blood. For my macro, when you click it once, summons the pet, you click it again, instantly kills it, goes on cooldown. I have both of these buttons showing because the killing your ghoul is a 2-minute cooldown, but summoning it's a 3-minute cooldown. So if you wanted to like save yourself a global and you kind of wanted to get a little bit extra DPS, and you knew like a predictable big hit was about to hit you and you could heal back after it, you can wait. You can wait for that. You can like get your pet out like a minute early, wait for that big hit to happen, and then summon it or kill it off like at the end of its duration instead of at the beginning. So that's like something you can do. I use Strangulate all the time. I almost spec for it because I use it so much. Like a ranged silence is incredible, so definitely have that on your bars. There's a lot of tanks that don't do enough interrupts in my opinion. I also put some points in Endless Winter, which means I took a point out of this epidemic. I interrupt so often that I need the less duration on this, but technically my outbreak is off like the target for a couple of seconds. Like, he doesn't have the diseases up on him, but this is how I'm spec'd. Don't ever take Crimson Scourge, it's a waste of talents. Abomination's Might would be sweet if other people don't have it in the raid. Maybe you could take Endless Winter talents and put them in here, but you know, someone else in my raid is going to have this if I'm raiding, so I would rather have those points in interrupt. And Bloodcake Blade, I mean, it's supposed to like cause extra threat, single target only. It's not that much extra threat. And Butchery is kind of good if you're like, I mean, think of it this way: if you kind of have like crap gear, or you don't have enough hit or expertise and you're missing a lot, or I mean, not if you have not threat stats, defensive stats. If you don't have a whole lot of dodge and parry, that kind of stuff, and you're not proccing this scent of blood, sometimes you can feel runic power starved. Take the 2 talents out of Endless Winter and put them in Butchery, and it can help you while you're gearing out. But I feel that I'm not runic power starved at my gear levels, so I don't worry about it. There's some things you can do for like AoE threat, like say you throw down your AoE. I have this macro right now, actually, Dancing Rune Weapon. Not only does it cast Dancing Rune Weapon, but it also uses my trinket, which gives me like another avoidance buff. I'll show you. I'm using this trinket that has dodge. Dancing Rune Weapon gives parry. So when I press them both together, like here, make sure I'm on defenses. If I'm attacking something and I press them both together, it gives me this huge string of avoidance. Something some people don't know about this is when you cast Like if your Dancing Rune weapon is on a target and you cast diseases and Dancing Rune weapons up, you can get 4 diseases on that target. And then you can spread all 4 of those diseases to other nearby targets. So that's something that's pretty cool for AoE threat. It doesn't stack the reduced damage taken talent, like, you know, Scarlet Fever, all of that. That doesn't stack when you have like multiple versions of this up on the same target. It just does like extra damage. And it's kind of cool to like load up the target full of like twice as many diseases. Let's see. Other cool Death Knight tricks. Icebound Fortitude is on a much lower cooldown than a lot of the other tanks by default. It's sweet. It's really good. And it's 50%. I think the other big tank cooldowns like Shield Wall and stuff like that is 40%. So abuse it as much as you can. Like, what else can they do that's like really cool? Necrotic Strikes. You know, if you are so unfortunate to like have all of your interrupts off cooldown and stuff is still not going your way and stuff is still not getting interrupted, if you are doing your normal rotation, these will all be death runes. You can just like load a target up with Necrotic Strikes. Sometimes that's really good. Like even in a raid environment, sometimes that's amazing. Like you can soak a lot. Army of the Dead, not just DPS cooldown. When you're channeling Army of the Dead, fun fact, you take 20% less damage and you keep dodging and parrying, and your blood shield, if you had it up before you started channeling, keeps absorbing damage. So this is a survivability cooldown. Don't ever forget that. If you're standing still and it's like you're out of cooldowns, well, you know, pull 3 runes together, 1 of each, and start channeling Army of the Dead. That's like 20% less damage taken while you're channeling, and it's a pretty long channel duration, so make sure you're doing that. Deathknights, if like worse comes to worse, there are some tricks you could do to stay alive, like without even a healer around. Warriors can sort of do this if they spec Piercing Howl, but not a whole lot of warriors, like prot warriors spec this. But if you didn't take Lichborn, you could go down to this like low in the tree and get Desecration. Some, like before, it was a well-known fact that Lichborn could heal you through your own Death Strikes. A lot of people were speccing Morbidity because Morbidity, like, it didn't used to do like increased death coil damage. It only did death and decay, but that was like the biggest threat you can have is with death and decay. So anything you could do to boost that was like more threat per second. The second talent that you could take next to it was this Desecration talent. You can kite ads forever as a Death Knight. You have these chains of ice that you can just like spam on targets as you're running around. You can do that on, like, you know, say like targets are just coming in all directions. Like say that all of these target dummies are sending little ads at me, like, you know, say, I don't know, Spine, like they're coming out of the holes and they're coming at me. If I had Desecration, I could plop it right here and kind of keep a little pool of bloods and circle that pool and keep the little pool of bloods in the Desecration so they're not actually hitting me. Pick up the spare ones with like these chains of ice and just keep like circling here. It's like, oh, here comes another spare ad, chains of ice that. And you can, like, since they're slowed, by the time you reach the other side of your little Desecration, they'll probably run into the Desecration, join all the other packs that are there, and just keep Death and Decay on top of your Desecration, and you can literally just like not take any damage, keep things like chasing you, do comparable damage while you're doing it, and you can just like kite forever. What can't Death Knights do, really? And that's everything I can think of off the top of my head. Rune Tap comes higher in the priority system as long as you're missing exactly 10% of your health. So try to use that as often as possible. This one, when I was talking about like gaming your runic empowerment, keep this rune off cooldown. Like, you don't have to always keep it off cooldown with like Heart Strike. Keep it off cooldown with Rune Tap if you're a little bit low in health. Like 10%, that's all it takes. I also have it, like, you have a lot of party utility with it right now. What I used to do, like for kiting, if you glyph Bone Shield, like that kiting thing I was talking about, it's really nice. I used to have Bone Shield in place of this glyph, actually, because that speed boost is like really useful in more ways than, like, it. You don't really notice how useful it is until you glyph for it, so like having your Bone Shield as a speed boost is pretty sweet, but I don't have it like that anymore. I have Magic Shell, because I just try to abuse this button as much as possible. I'm Glyph for Vampiric Blood, because I like that as a healer cooldown. I have my 4-piece set bonus. And then I have the Rune Tap, because like this, you know, this 5% to your party health goes up when you press Vampiric Blood if you have your 4-piece set bonus. 4-piece set bonuses makes it like a raid wall, your Vampiric Blood. So I have both those glyphed, and I can like heal the party up, like all 5 people around me with this like raid cooldown, basically. So you have a lot of control over not just yourself but the raid. It's pretty sweet. That's all I can think about with Deathknights. Hopefully in these next couple weeks I'll actually get to raid with it and show you guys what it looks like. But for now, you're just gonna have to settle with my boring explanation on target dummies. Sorry about the spine. I'm gonna get this uploaded to YouTube, and I think I'm just gonna leave in the mistake. I'll just put like a big disclaimer over top of it or something. If you're interested in our mount, go see Razian, and I guess until next week, I'll see ya.